Hi, Michael Alvarez. I'm the Flintridge Foundation Professor of Political and Computational Social Science here at Caltech, and I'm one of the co-directors of Caltech's Lynn Center for Science, Society, and Policy. And I'm really excited to have Ramit Debnath with us today. Ramit's from the University of Cambridge, so he's come all the way across to spend some time with us here today and to spend some time with us doing some research projects tomorrow. So, Ramit, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
So, you have this really interesting and unique background. You're an electrical engineer. Now, that, of course, at Caltech, that's great, right?
Yeah.
But for somebody who is really actively collaborating with social scientists, that is a bit unusual. So can you talk a little bit about your background, you know,
Sure.
as like electrical engineer, and then, of course, how you got excited about the kind of work that you're doing today?
Sure, yeah, thanks, Mike. So definitely, I'm trained as an electrical engineer, and one of the things that I was really interested is studying how we think about energy systems and how people use energy. And that was my entry into this broad field of energy and society, because it's people who needs energy to function. And in fact, that's something when I started to pivot to look at into social science problems, that energy is not just a engineering problem where we produce energy, but it's also the distribution, using, and how people translate energy into meaningful kind of outputs for themselves. And it was at that time when I started to do my PhD at Cambridge, and essentially it was like, how do we extract this information from people? And it really brought me back to your book, which was like Introduction to Computational Social Science. And I was really fascinated because it had the political science problems, and which I never experienced as an engineer. But then there is this common thing about how do we measure certain signals from very unusual sources, which you wouldn't get that in an engineering or a kind of scientific setting, because it's like out in the wild, things are all over the place, and how can we extract information from there? So I think that brought me or trained me to be more think in the direction of social science and social scientists, and add these tools that we use, borrowing from engineering and other fields.
Well, electrical engineers, in my experience, think about problems very differently than social scientists do. So how have you taken the training that you had as an electrical engineer and applied it to these social science problems, or is it more that the work that you're doing that is bringing social science to bear is somehow synergistic with your training as an electrical engineer?
Yeah. So although my undergrad was in electrical engineering, my masters were in a transitional degree at Cambridge called Engineering for Sustainable Development, and that's like a degree specifically designed for engineers who want to look at sustainability challenges. And we were exposed to literature from systems theory, Donella Meadows and everyone, Robert Forrester, who actually thought about these problems as an interconnected systems problem. And yeah, so I think that was a really kind of a pivot in thinking from engineering and then connecting it with more kind of broader social kind of problems and global challenges on that.
So talk about our origin story.
Yeah.
You tell the story better than I do.
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, it was during my PhD when, as I mentioned, I was trying to look at how can we extract meaningful information from how people deliberate about energy affordability and accessibility challenges. And my PhD was actually looking at people who live in slums in India, Brazil, and Nigeria, and try to see, I mean, what are the structural barriers? I mean, it's fine, we know, low income, high cost of energy, but beyond that, is there something that we can extract from really grounded, deliberative setting? And then that really brought me to this whole methods around how do we extract information which are embedded in interviews, texts, text analysis, and that was your kind of the red book, which I call the principles.
The little red book, right?
Yeah, the little red book on computational social science. And in fact, that was quite interesting because there was no other book like that, which I felt. I mean, there were research paper, which were a review paper on CSS, but never kind of a first step like a kind of a book which we could use. And yeah, and then I reached out to you, and we have been working like since then. So
Right, yeah, you know,
yeah.
so for me it was an important lesson because, you know, you and I'm sure you're getting this now today because, you know, you've really just gone off and developed into this amazing scholar, right? That you know, you get these emails, right, of students and students at other universities who just want a little bit of your time. And it's always important to answer those emails, isn't it, right?
Yeah.
Because you just really never know what's going to evolve out of that. And
Exactly.
one of the things that has just been so exciting for us is that, you know, we've now started to, not only have we been working together for, what, 6, 7 maybe years, something like that, we've now started a lab.
Yeah.
So you want to talk a little bit about this joint lab that we've just started up?
Exactly. I mean, our initial interaction was also in this whole niche around environment and climate, which, I mean, it's even now it's very rare for computational social scientists to look into environment and climate problems, and I think that was quite interesting for us to explore those, but with this whole idea of social listening, and I think that really feeds into our kind of labs. Thinking like how do we leverage these collective intelligence that we have, and especially trying to think around these challenges around environmental sustainability, like climate action. And again, I mean, because it's Caltech and a lot of people study climate and environment here, but those are very process-driven engineering side, and then there is a very less research on the social or the human dimension of this climate crisis. And I think that's what we have been working for quite some time now, trying to even understand or observe this human dimension of climate crisis.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun in the sense that there have been a number of students and postdocs here at Caltech who you've worked directly with. And who you've helped me mentor, which I really appreciate. And I've also had the opportunity to work with a number of your students as you've been building, you know, your own group at Cambridge.
Yeah, and I think it's not easy because of naturally the time difference. It's like,
that's the big problem, right?
Exactly. Like your morning is always end of my day. But I think it has been quite nice, and our like students, they really feel this interaction going on with projects, and you have been very kind with your time as well, working on papers and comments. Like, I mean, some students are easy to work, some are hard, and that's that's been challenge. And in fact, I mean, we published quite a lot, and in the process, I think that's a really nice output from our joint virtual lab that we have.
Well, now recently you've taken on a new position. As the executive director of CHIA.
Yeah.
So tell us about what CHIA does and what your role as executive director is.
Exactly. So I think CHIA is, it stands for Center for Human Inspired AI, and CHIA's one of the founding goal is very similar to how we think about how do we use these, I mean, technology that's coming up, AI, for global good. And so that's the foundation of this center. So CHIA has a lot more than just environment. It has the whole spectrum, from fundamental AI to healthcare, cognitive, creative AI, sustainability. I specifically look at AI for sustainability. And there, the whole idea is two. One is definitely we have a very good MPhil and PhD program called Human Inspired AI, so to train the next generation. And also there is this whole idea that what happens if you bring out computer scientists from computer science and then throw them into a kind of a global challenge setting? So how are you going to use these approaches? And I think that drives this whole center. And my role is essentially like, how do we grow this center into something more kind of leading unit with lots of students and industry engagement coming in. Also doing research where, I mean, the AI is still very technocentric in many ways, but again, what does it mean to have this human dimension? So, like for example, in UK and European Union's context, they are very concerned about the regulations around AI. So, how do we bring in that like AI for public policy or AI for public good? That meaning is still, I mean, it's not there yet. So, I think that's one of the core focus on trying to do that. And same like when we talk about AI or any machine learning, it's like how are we using them for the broader benefits or broader goals around poverty alleviation, energy transition. And although there are questions that whether AI itself generates a lot more emissions, but again, thinking through those problems. So I think that's the center, and for now it's funded by Google because they also see the value in creating something, and especially I think they are very serious about education because they are quite concerned that it needs to be a much more stronger like pitch than
Right.
doing just research. So I think that's moving the needle there.
Well, it's going to be exciting, and,
Yeah.
and one of the things we're going to be talking about during your visit here is exactly how we can deepen, our institutional collaboration
Exactly.
between our center and your center, and I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like you already have a very good blueprint on how your center runs, so I think that's definitely would be very helpful for us to connect as well. And yeah, I mean we have lots of overlapping themes, and right from environment to the political dimension of this technology to like even the applied side. So yeah, it'll be really interesting.
So what projects are you working on right now that you're really excited about?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, it goes back to your first question, like from electrical engineering point of view, and also building on a lot of our previous work, is like, how can we leverage these theories from electrical engineering who always think about signals? So how can we learn about social signals with the modern tools that we have? So it can be tools from generative AI, it can be existing tools from text analysis that we have been doing for a longer time, and from like various data sources that we can get on that. So I think that's something I'm quite excited, one project. The next one is very Chia-driven project where, so we partnered with Cambridge City Council, and there they want to build us a predictive risk analysis kind of a model for social housing. So essentially, like the households in Cambridge which are under vulnerable conditions, not just from income, but poor housing quality. I mean, because it's England, it's always rains. So again, I mean, those sick building syndrome and everything that's there in these council housing, and how AI might help in at least identifying these hotspots. But here, the interesting bit is by design, it's like we don't make the decision. It's the city council authority officers who would be allocating resources and deciding those, like whether the hotspots that we generate are actually the same cases that they have in their records. So actually creating this human in the loop kind of framework on that. So that one is, I think, quite because it's has a direct impact on the stuff that we want to do with AI, and these tools might help the local council to like at least have some incentive programs or social protection programs for this housing. And one more project that I'm quite interested is actually Earth observation based project. So I mean it's nothing new that we have Earth observation data. Caltech is really good at that, but then the idea is, can we use our modern language models, visual language models to even look at government records of these observational sites. So for example, we are trying to map every river in the world, and on top of that is the hydropower dams, because these dams in some places they have a huge benefit to the local area. In some places they really change the from biodiversity to the even local community, and in a much more kind of negative context. So I think, can these two data sets be combined together to have a new insight on risk or the loss around biodiversity loss and risk hotspots, something like that. So again, that's quite a geospatial AI meeting social
right, exactly.
social science there to come up with newer ideas that we can see from there.
Well, I think that's one of the threads that underlies all your work that I just find fascinating, and I really enjoy the opportunity to collaborate with you on, and I think it's particularly valuable for Caltech students and postdocs who get a chance to work with you. Is that you have this really unique sense, and I don't really quite know how to describe it other than to say sense, of how to bring different disparate data sets together, and also different methods together, right? And combine them all into sort of one coherent approach to just tackling a very specific and important question. I mean, you've really helped me learn how to do that in ways that I don't think I really understood before. And all the papers that you produce, that really is kind of their theme, where it's very different data sets brought together and using really different innovative methods to answer these really important questions about climate and sustainability in the world today.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, this is like one small example of how it's very experimental, to be honest, and sometimes we have seen in our
sometimes
papers.
It works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, sometimes right. It's like a desk reject. But one experiment that I've been doing with my students in the group is, so in our group meetings, I say like 4 people sitting next to each other, because in my group there is a huge variety of disciplinary background. It's really disciplinary agnostic, with just one requirement that you need to know some bit, data science or statistics to be able to handle data. And then the experiment is you talk to each other, but then focus on solving one environmental challenge that you think is important. So I think that really also helped me to think about like problem first, then methods. It's basically like breaking up these problems and then trying to see what methods are really helping us answer it in some form. And so it's very kind of data-driven in many ways, where problems around pollution, and it can be tackled from chemistry, it can be tackled from even exposures and things like that. But has anyone think about how people report about pollution problems in social media or text form? That's a new data that people haven't seen those. So I think that experiment really helps in many cases. But again, it's a very hit and miss in certain contexts.
Well, but that's the nature of research, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You have to try things, and some things work, some things don't. As long as you're ahead of the curve, right? More things work than don't. You're in pretty good shape.
And in fact, I could see even it's a very new field coming up in the environmental computational social science domain, which is probably you can name handful of people in this space. But I think that's now even big journals and the popular publishing venues are also understanding that this is a very important and niche thing coming up, where you use these understanding of social systems, but from this computation and environmental lens. And I think I'm very excited about this field.
Well, you're helping to really build this new field. I do think you're the pioneer in this area.
I think, learning from you, again, the Red Book, I often go back on that. So
thanks for that. But I do think it's an emerging area, and I think it's, you use the word niche. I'd say it's more than niche at this point. I do think it's really growing and exploding, and it's a very exciting place to be doing research.
Thank you.
Well, I wanted to thank you for coming to Caltech, first of all, but for being with me here today, and really enjoy the opportunity to be working with you tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Ramit.
Exactly. Thank you so much.